Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, July 20th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan, on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week so far and try to make sense of it all. Before I do get started, guys, we are a friendly podcast, as we try to be. Sometimes words do fly that you probably don't want to be repeating, and sometimes there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, but viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we start off this midweek? Well, pretty much. What I'm about to show, I literally tried to find on most reputable news sites. I tried. Your ABC, your NBC, your CBS, your MSNBC, your Young Turks, I say reputable. I mean, we're not talking Fox News because Fox News is not an actual news station. That's already been proved more times. We're not talking about Newsmax, which is basically Fox News Light if it had light beer. We're not talking about The Blaze, which again is extreme Christianity on a very conservative scale. Reputable news. That being said, I couldn't find a possible story of this outside of Newsweek, where you would think in our halls of Congress that something of this nature would be historically as well as being reported. But we shouldn't be surprised because, again, the GOP decided that we're all going to vote no. But before I actually go into detail what they voted no on, just hear this guy out first.
This amendment, my amendment, would require the Department of Defense, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security to report on extremism or threats of extremism within our military or within our uniformed services. Threats of neo-Nazi, white supremacist activity, or any other extremist activity that could be a threat, as not just within the services, but including service members separated from the service or federal law enforcement, whether it's due to white supremacist or neo-Nazi incidents. And then the amendment requires the agencies to develop a plan to prevent those incidents in the future. Such behavior, such extremism, is a threat to us in all segments of society. There is no reason to believe that our military is any different. These are exceptions. They are rare, but we must do everything we can to identify them and to thwart them before risks become reality.
Okay. So keep in mind what that man just said. They introduced a bill to the defense program, amendment to the defense program bill, where he pretty much says all forms of law enforcement are to look for and to examine and to root out Nazi or racist white supremacy, those that are in on it, those that are of it, and things of that nature, to root it out. Even more so, make a plan to make sure it stays out. You would think it is a completely noble thing to do. One that everybody should get on, because you would think, yeah, we don't want Nazi dictators. We don't want Nazi people in law enforcement. We already knew a long time ago through the FBI report that law enforcement hasn't infiltrated white supremacy has infiltrated all ranks of law enforcement. There's already an FBI report that's decades old about this. And you would think that being in the House, that bill being submitted would turn around and be an overwhelming yes. We don't want this because we want to show that we're not supporting racist and Nazi sympathizers. Let me go back to the previous clip for a second. Notice something there, and I do mean notice something there. For all those that I'm trying to point it out to, keep in mind, this is in the House of Representatives. Almost all Democrats decided to vote yay. All House Republicans voted no. Keep in mind what I just said. on a literal bill that is to basically help out to root out neo-Nazi activity and white supremacy in our law enforcement agencies. Something clear as day that nobody wants. All House Republicans voted no. That should be an alarm that should be going out to the world. It should be. But you know the one thing that I have a problem with? You'll be hard-pressed to find that on ABC. You'll be hard-pressed to find that on NBC. You'll be hard-pressed to find that on CBS. You'll be hard-pressed to find on MSNBC. All these award-winning, journalism-driven networks. This was just 6 days ago. Not a hint of it. And it just amazes me so that why is this not being reported? Why? I mean, for the simple fact of the matter is, I understand, because I've been saying this since last year, we're not too far off. Now we're 2 months and counting for the midterm elections. Imagine if one of those news cycles reported that story, and now all House Republicans have to explain themselves. Why did you vote no on a bill that would root out neo-Nazis and white supremacists in law enforcement? Why did you vote no? That could be detrimentally and probably career-ending. But the problem I have with this is not the fact that I'm not surprised that every Republican voted no. Not surprised by that. Why is this not being reported more? Why? I can only think that, again, with news, much like social media, whatever the scandal is what gets the most likes, gets the most clicks and views and things of that nature. I mean, that's the thing. That's where the revenue is. I get it. But something so detrimental to our current events, our society, our country, and yet nobody's talking about it. It blows my mind that 6 days have passed and I can't find a single iota of someone on these major news networks talking about it. That yes, the GOP is exactly what I thought they were. A bunch of old white men that would rather oppress minorities and women and go back to the way America used to be in the 1950s when they were the top of the food chain. That's what they want. And yet they just voted no. Thankfully that motion did pass. It did pass by a slim majority. But the point I'm making is no one's not talking about it, and no one's not talking about it. But anyway, things they are talking about, though, because, again, when it comes to the NRA and gun nuts and homosexuals, they still believe that, and the good guy with a gun theory still saves lives. Unfortunately, in this case, there's one of those broken clock is right twice a day stories where an armed individual stopped an gunman in Indiana.
Most familiar scene of evacuation in America.
So we were in the food court and we heard loud gunshots.
As an Indiana shopping mall quickly became among the latest settings for a mass shooting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Monday, the police chief announced the identity of the suspected gunman, 20-year-old Jonathan Sapirman, who police say entered the mall Sunday at 4:54 p.m.
He walks directly to the food court restroom. 1 hour and 2 minutes later, he exits the restroom and shoots Victor Gomez outside of the restroom. He then points his rifle into the food court where Pedro and Rosa Pineda were eating dinner and shot both Rosa and Pedro.
According to police, Sapirman shot and killed 3 people Sunday evening using a rifle: Victor Gomez, Rosa Rivera, and Pedro Pineda. Police say he injured at least 2 others, including a 12-year-old girl at the Greenwood Park Mall, just outside Indianapolis. And then, police say less than 2 minutes after the shooting began, the attacker was killed by a, quote, Good Samaritan with a lawfully carried gun.
The shooter fired several rounds, striking the suspect. The suspect attempted to retreat back into the restroom and fail.
We're very thankful for a young 22-year-old man who stopped this violent act.
And that's relatively rare. According to an analysis published by the New York Times, there were at least 433 active shooter attacks from 2000 to 2021. Of those, just 22 ended with an armed bystander shooting the attacker. And of those 22, 10 were from a security guard or off-duty officer. Countrywide this year, there have already been more than 350 mass shootings where 4 or more people were shot, according to the Gun Violence Archive. This one, like many do, striking at the core of normalcy.
It's like one of those things where this is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be going shopping.
And everyone that day thought they would be going shopping. Everyone except for maybe one person. Police say the shooting suspect arrived at the mall with 3 weapons total, 2 rifles and a pistol, more than 100 rounds of ammunition, only used one of the rifles during the shooting. And as for the Good Samaritan, the police chief said it didn't appear this person had any police or military training, but engaged this gunman almost immediately from quite a distance, to use his words, with his pistol. And in doing so, likely saved many lives, Jake.
Okay, so this is the thing that I'm going to have a problem with. I'm going to have a problem with the fact that there's going to be, as you probably already know, conservative media. Conservative media is going to run with this. Gun nuts are going to run with this. Ammosexuals are going to run with this. Those who are, above the security training, they'll suggest that, okay, this is a one-off. Most security consultants will probably sit there and say this is a one-off. Just like it was reported, very few times that an armed bystander actually stopped a gunman. Now, that being said, it's not going to stop them from sitting there saying, see, good guy with a gun. Good guy with a gun stops armed intruder. And you know what this is? And I say this all the time. This is the gun society that we live in, where a gun has more protection than a child, more coverage than insurance in your car. At the same time, the fact that its rights and access to it are more available than a woman that's just simply trying to get an abortion. Yes, gun. If you are a gun, you have more protection and coverage in the United States than the average human being. And at the same time, whenever there's a shooting, it's a cycle. There's a shooting, gun reform talk comes up, gun sales go up, ammo goes up, quietness. And of course, it was up to this bipartisan bill, the bipartisan gun bill that was passed that was really pandering to Republicans. It really doesn't really do a lot. It actually should go farther, but I digress. But there's going to be those that are going to run with this and sit there and say, it's a good guy with a gun. No, the good guy with the gun theory still doesn't work. It's actually dangerous. Now, keep in mind, I own firearms. But I can also agree that, going out and about, I can't argue with folks. That's what I say. It's a difficult conversation because I can't argue with folks when they sit there and said they'd rather be armed and out and about because they don't know what can happen. And obviously they're right, considering the fact that a shooting is almost occurring in almost a 48-hour to 72-hour basis between shootings. I can't blame them for that mentality. But at the same time, when you take a firearm out in the public, you are a liability. I mean, that's the one thing I always want to sit there and say. When you take a firearm and you conceal carry out in public, you are a liability. You are not an asset. You're not somebody that you can depend on. You're a liability because you don't know 100 different things can go wrong out there when you're armed out there in the world. Your gun can be taken from you. Your gun can misfire. Your gun you may forget. Although mistakes, people train to make sure mistakes like that don't happen. But there's still 100 different things that can change that outcome, simply put, because you decided to conceal carry. But again, I understand it. I just don't do it for my benefit because I don't want to be a liability. And also this young man, which all respect to him, he's not pulling a Kyle and just literally being out there for the world team being his hero. He's basically lying low, and I can't knock him for that. I'm not going to give him shit for that because he's not trying to get in the spotlight. He's simply just trying to live his life. I can't knock him for that. But at the same time, I can't knock him for wanting to defend himself because everybody has the right to defend themselves. But it goes back to what I said, because I guarantee as the story comes out about this person that was killed, guarantee that those guns were not purchased illegally. I guarantee that there is a massive there's a massive void of laws governing guns wherever they live. I guarantee that. But you know what people stick to? Gun-free zones. Oh, they only come to gun-free zones. That was the argument they made when they said criminals don't obey laws. Neither do people that actually buy guns legally and still take them on there. So the whole gun-free zone was gun. If it wasn't a gun-free zone, then what? The same outcome would happen? Or are you expecting everybody to be armed as the Wild Wild West again? Because you see how asinine that conversation, that debate can go? Because when people believe that is the one level of deception that I hate when it comes to firearms. I never want people to believe that you are empowered by firearms. Because when you're empowered, sometimes you do dumb stuff, like concealed carry when you probably shouldn't have. Or, feel like you can be trusted because I've done all this training. Okay. I've seen people with driver's licenses that couldn't parallel park or drive in a straight line. Does that mean I should trust them because they have that? That's all I'm saying. But moving along, guys, I did want to cover this part because it's amazing how Republicans, of course, are changing the field for the midterm elections, talking about making elections safer, yet the whole time they should be looking at the big lie themselves because now all these fake electors that were for Trump are now under criminal prosecution.
Investigation of attempts to overturn election results there. And a big shift, prosecutors say that all 16 so-called fake electors who were part of the former president's scheme and who signed an unofficial electoral certificate that was sent to the National Archives are now targets of a criminal probe. They've all gotten what are known as target letters. CNN's Nick Valencia joins us now with the latest. So what more have you learned, Nick?
Hey there, Anderson. Yeah, this is major. So significant because it shows that District Attorney Fani Willis here could be inching towards potential criminal charges in her probe as she looks for potential election interference here in the state of Georgia. Up until now, we know that these 16 electors some of them had been participating and cooperating with Willis, but this is the first time that we're hearing that these 16 electors could face potential criminal charges. According to one of the attorneys for many of these electors, some of them had been cooperating with Willis as witnesses, but not as targets. And all that changed, according to court filings, in late June when attorneys for Willis's office say that new evidence came to light. Now, attorneys for the electors are pushing back on this claim. They're saying that this is all a publicity stunt and that the electors agreed to be witnesses for Willis's investigation, but it was not in good faith. But why this is so significant is, it shows that Willis is potentially inching closer towards these criminal charges. And it also shows, Anderson, just how wide-reaching and the broad scope of her investigation as well. And
so again, this is one of the things that I keep telling you guys when it comes to elections, that the main ones who are usually arguing and saying that these elections are full of fraud, that there are miscounted votes, that, there are people putting in votes that for people that have died and things of that nature. Look at those very same people that are crying wolf. Because now those very same 16 people that were working for Trump, as they claim to be, may be facing criminal prosecution. Which only goes to show you, especially with the January 6th hearing still going down, if you guys haven't figured out by now, that's a criminal case against Trump. If they can prove, which obviously is beyond a shadow of a doubt, but again, that's the court of public opinion. In the court of law, you have to prove beyond a reasonable shadow of a doubt in order to get the conviction. And at this point, that commission is pretty close to that fat lady singing. She's warming up. But other thing I want to say is cool. That's really coincidental, guys. I know I talked about this last week, but it seems that, Starbucks is closing stores for, as they say, security reasons. I find it very odd because, as I pointed out, that some Starbucks stores are actually unionizing, which again, union, a word that corporations across the globe hate. Why? Because you've heard it being said many times. Unions hold corporations accountable. Any rich person or any people from corporate that always sit there and tells you that, oh, you can work with us. We're a family. Run fast, run far. That being said, guys, I want to get into Starbucks for a second because Starbucks is not done closing stores. They are beginning to close stores, which last week they were actually going to close. They were at one point closing 16 stores. They are actually going to be offering more stores to be closed, quote unquote, making Starbucks a safer store. The workers are seeing firsthand the challenges facing our communities: personal safety, racism, lack of access to healthcare, a growing health mental crisis, rising drug use, and more. With stores in thousands of the community across the country, we know these challenges can at times play out within our stores too. That's the reasoning. The reasoning that they're saying is, because society is finally starting to come to our coffee stores, we're going to start closing them. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that unionization is happening. Not at all. I just find it very peculiar. I find it very peculiar that, again, when corporations, this is their answer to unionizing. Some folks were, it's almost like when we were talking about that, wages. Can you imagine almost close to six or not really six, almost a decade ago, we were sitting there saying that wages need to be raised. That, everybody kept on saying, I should be, if you're gonna flip burgers, you should get a better job. Who knew in 2022 they took your advice and now you're sitting an hour plus at McDonald's waiting for your food? They got better jobs. But that being said, though, remember the threats? Oh, well, we got to raise prices. The Big Mac's going to cost $10. Really, the Big Mac's been changing in price since the 80s. And yet, wages are still the same. Oh, well, we'll have to get people start ordering from kiosks because that's what we're going to start doing. Have you seen people order from kiosk and fast food places? Not fun. They'd rather deal with people. They told every lie under the sun. And now that unionizing is happening, Starbucks has sat there and said, we'll bump it. We'll just close stores. I told you guys my Michael Dell story. I will never stop telling it. Because, again, I have yet to be called out on it. That Michael Dell hates unions. Would have closed here in Nashville if we talked about it. But the powers that be in his management put in place made sure, don't ever say that. If Michael Dell hears union, he's going to close up shop, move somewhere else. That just goes to show you that corporations have way too much leeway and not enough taxes put on them. That's all I'm saying. But also another thing that's not really getting a lot of news, at least not yet, and I'm kind of sad to report this, guys, but I don't know if you guys remember the case of Elijah McCain, the young man who was literally bound and gagged by officers and paramedics just because they thought he was suspicious when really he was just walking home. Well, unfortunately, news has come down that a judge in Colorado did not find enough sufficient evidence to pursue the former 5 police officers and paramedics. And because of that, the case is being dismissed. I do not understand it. That simply because his encounter with police, which keep in mind, for all you guys that don't remember, he was the one walking home from a convenience store, had a mask over his face, and people found that suspicious. Instead of them trying to talk him down, actually using de-escalation tactics and actually talking to him like a natural human being, they decided to basically restrain him, and paramedics gave him an excessive dose of ketamine. Ketamine, if you guys don't know, is a very powerful freaking sedative. Ketamine in large doses is actually given to animals. Now you gotta think, if an animal that weighs several more hundred pounds than a human is taking ketamine, and they're giving ketamine they're giving that same thing to a human at a smaller dose, but in this case an excessive one, how is it not criminal? That is the thing that actually bothers me. That those 5 police officers and paramedics will not be given criminal cases. How do you explain that? How do you explain it to his family? Because I'll tell you, because I'll be honest with you, it's a little hard of a pill to swallow. Like, what is it finally going to take for law enforcement and those who are supposedly sworn to protect actually going to be held accountable? We maybe have 2 or 3 officers, although really a lot of them aren't serving the term. They didn't really get lengthy prison terms, but still, when are we going to finally get some actual justice? Because I feel sorry for Elijah McCain's family. Because the fact that because of the actions of officers and paramedics, he's not going home that night. They actually at one point may still be able to. And that's fracked up. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this as well because, we love it. We hate it. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, it saved a lot of us, myself included, Amazon. Well, the one thing about Amazon is Amazon's in its warehouses, and it's infamous stories of no bathroom breaks. It's infamous stories of trying to keep up with quotas. It's infamous stories of drivers having to pee in bottles just to make sure that they can keep their deliveries on time. Those warehouses are finally being investigated.
Amazon is facing a federal investigation stemming from complaints about poor working conditions. Prosecutors, along with the Labor Department, are inspecting Amazon warehouses across the country, beginning with locations outside New York, Chicago, and Orlando. At issue, the grueling pace of work. One employee says she was on her feet so long, her leg was swelling. The company's accused of hiding worker injuries Amazon has not commented on the investigation.
Think about that for a second. Are we really surprised? I mean, the simple fact of the matter is it's Amazon. Jeff Bezos, when he was running Amazon, did not care because, most of these places, most of those mega corporations will run through people. Their turnover rate is atrocious. But they always sit there and said that's the cost of doing business. For every let's just say on a given day, for every 500 to 1,000 workers that they quit, they terminate, they get double that back coming through. I mean, don't be wrong. It's 2022. We all need jobs. We all need income to get by. And if Amazon's the only thing available in your area that's going to cover the bills, I understand it. But at the same time, Amazon understands that they have acknowledged that they are basically a meat grinder without saying they're a meat grinder. They chew workers up, spit them out, and the machine keeps rolling. Now, for all those that are probably wondering, what does that mean? Well, if the Department of Labor does find issues with Amazon, number one, you could be seeing a lot of changes because the Department of Labor really could shut Amazon down if those warehouses are deemed unfit or unsafe for workers. If they find unsafe conditions, if they find that workers' hours are beyond ridiculous, they can put in measures that Amazon will have to shape up and pay for in order for them to operate in the U.S. But again, how many stories have we heard of people who work for Amazon where if you're on the floor, you can't take a bathroom break, or you don't get time off during Prime Day or Prime weekend. You don't get time. You don't get to go to the bathroom and really relieve yourself because they're putting you on a timer. Everything is literally tied to an algorithm, and I know that firsthand. Everything is tied to an algorithm, and if you don't abide by said algorithm, then of course you're let go. You know why? Because Amazon has figured the cost of doing business just means they just replace you with someone else. And another reason why I sit there and say corporate loyalty is basically about as helpful as finding a unicorn in Target. It's mythical. Don't believe it. That being said, we're going to switch over gears for a second because if you guys remember from last week, the Uvalde, the actual surveillance video was released of the officers waiting 77 minutes before engaging the gunman. And well, keep in mind that actually was shared out for the world. The parents of those fallen children did not get to see it first. So now, as they were having a public meeting, public town hall in Uvalde, you can imagine the parents definitely had a lot to say, and I can't blame them.
I can't help but wonder if they just didn't find our children worthy of being saved.
At a school board meeting that ordinarily would have discussed textbooks and budgets,
You need to clean house.
instead,
I'm as pissed off as everybody in this room.
came fury.
Y'all do not give a damn about our children or us.
The anger in Uvalde, Texas, boiling over for more than 3 hours after a blistering preliminary report found egregiously poor decision-making during the response to the massacre.
Y'all's condolences and apologies don't mean to us anymore.
Berlinda Ariola's granddaughter was killed.
The only reason why we feel like you're coming out now is because you saw the videos. It's out there, and now we all know the truth.
She's among those calling for the firing of School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo, heard pleading with the shooter.
Sir, let me know if there's any kids in there or anything. This could be peaceful.
The exchanges between parents
Don't have an answer?
and school board members growing more tense.
I am not a coward. I am a combat veteran of Vietnam.
But perhaps most poignant, the students themselves.
And I don't want to go to your guys' school if they don't have protected.
The school district says it's installing new fencing, cameras, and door locks, but incoming senior Jasmine Casares, whose sister Jackie was killed, says more needs to be done.
What are you going to do to make sure I don't have to wait 77 minutes bleeding out on my classroom floor, just like my little sister did?
The school's police chief, Pete Arredondo, has said that he didn't think he was the incident commander, but according to this new report, he actually co-authored the district's active shooter response plan, calling for him to take the lead.
And that's a lot. Think about that for a second. I mean, I can't fathom or try to imagine, especially what those parents are going through still, and to sit there and they come to that meeting and be like, "What are you guys gonna do?" I mean, I can imagine some parents are pulling their kids out. We'll go somewhere else. I can't trust it. Especially if Frack McNamara's like, he called him a coward. I'm like, well, you guys did put people in place to run the school system. Yes, you should be held accountable. And if you're not giving the person answers, you're not giving a grieving parent answers, and you're sitting there silent, yeah, you should be called coward. He's like, I'm not a coward. I was a combat veteran in Vietnam. And yet you couldn't answer a grieving person. You couldn't answer a grieving parent. You couldn't answer a grieving parent. Why not just sit there and say, yes, this falls on us. Those children's deaths fall on us. They fall on that police chief. They fall on our school. They fall on our school system from head to toe. Where's the accountability? I know I say accountability a lot, but where is it? Everybody can be responsible, but who's going to be there to be accountable? Because yes, we can blame the gunman. We can blame the fact that he purchased the guns legally. We can, blame the fact that he somehow managed to get through a door. We can blame the fact that good guys with a gun were standing at the edge of a door for 77 minutes instead of breaching in on one gunman. We can blame a lot. But where's the accountability for those that are looking at this and going, yeah, we fracked up. We fracked up. There's nothing we can say or do. But what we can do is take accountability for this. And if we need to step down, then we step down. It's that simple. But no, like the parents said, like that one parent said, you don't care about us or about our children. You care about yourself and the position you have. And that's truly sad. But you know what else is truly sad, though, guys? The fact that everybody still keeps believing Joe Manchin will come around. I've been saying this since last year. I hate to say I was right. Call me Nostradamus for this one. I sat there and said a year ago, Joe Manchin will literally be the albatross in the Biden administration. Worse than Trump hanging around like the bad ghost of Christmas past. Worse than George Bush coming back and saying, I think the Republicans are doing a terrible job. But again, Manchin is the albatross for the Biden administration. And I keep saying this, for a person like him, he's a walking conflict of interest. Whether it's defending women's rights, whether it's trying to get America's economy back on track, and most importantly, helping us with this climate. Because if you guys haven't noticed, wherever you are right now, it's not just the South that's God's hot plate. It's everywhere. Just saying.
As the nation swelters through this heat wave, any immediate climate action is on the ropes after two stinging defeats. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin from Coleridge, West Virginia, today defending his decision to block President Biden's climate legislation, including tax incentives for wind and solar power and electric vehicles. Manchin says it calls for spending that will send inflation even higher.
I haven't walked away from anything, and inflation is my greatest concern.
Add to that the Supreme Court limiting the EPA's ability to regulate carbon emissions from power plants, the nation's second largest source of the gases driving climate change.
What do those two developments do to President Biden's climate agenda?
Well, there's no sugarcoating it. They are major setbacks.
Biden hoped to cut U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. Polls show a majority of Americans, 65%, are worried about global warming. But only 1% of voters say climate change is the top issue facing the country. Among voters under 30, that number rises only to 3%.
Climate change always seems to be the issue that we can put off until tomorrow. Are we at the point that we can no longer put off acting on climate change?
We absolutely should not be putting off action on climate change. 30 years ago, it was a problem for the future. It is a problem for now.
President Biden is promising executive action, but climate activists believe without Congress acting to speed up wind and solar installations and electric vehicle purchases, it won't be enough.
Well, I tried.
Returning home over.
Hang on a second. Quiet, you. I tried to tell you. Manchin is not going to bend. He never does. Manchin is like that person that wants to sit there and say that he talked and he talked and he talked and he talked, but he's still gonna go what he wants. This is a man that knows off the bat that he literally can control the Democratic He controls the Democratic governing right now, I should say. He controls their entire syllabus up until the midterms. He knows it. With this slim majority that the Democrats have, every vote counts. I don't even hear from Sinema anymore. Is Sinema still alive? I hope so. But Manchin has always said it. I'm worried about inflation. I'm worried about inflation. I'm worried that we're spending too much money, and we, I'm just trying to make sure that we don't lead to inflation. Yes, inflation. That's what we're worried about. We're worried about multi-million-dollar corporations making record profits in a post-pandemic year while wages have been stagnated since 2007. Yes, that's inflation. We are worried that because of the wheel of capitalism that has shifted America from an exporting to an importing business, where again, post-COVID, prices have went up because supplies have become limited. But hey, Manchin is worried about inflation. Not forgetting the fact that Manchin is from West Virginia, a coal mining company where coal is pretty much a dying business just like fracking, but he doesn't want to admit it. Why? Because Manchin is a part of a board of a coal mining business in his home state. At some point, especially when it comes to EPA climate change, some people have to literally look at Joe Manchin and sit there and say what I've been saying since last year. Manchin is a walking conflict of interest. Don't believe me? There was a chance that Roe versus Wade could have been codified post turning down by the conservative Supreme Court. Manchin voted against it. Think about that for a second. A Democrat voted against women's rights, where if he did, it would have codified Roe versus Wade, and a lot of women would be breathing easier. That's right. Manchin against the environment, against women. If I was a Democrat running in West Virginia, I've already got my commercial spots planned out. Just saying. But shouldn't be surprised. You shouldn't be surprised just again with Republicans. Again, this is why I always find it funny. Again, like I talk about Republicans celebrating the turn down of Roe versus Wade, are now pushing bills forward because when it comes to anti-abortion groups, they don't have a strategy to help the people when they're born. That's the one thing you can love about the one thing I love that George Carlin got right about conservatives. They'll care for the unborn, but once you're born, you are effed in so many ways. Don't believe me? Because Republicans were getting hammed because of this, they were like, oh no, we have a way to help the born once they're born. You know why? We're going to produce bills that were aimed at providing federal support, some of them through crisis pregnancy centers, churches, and state policies promoting families. Let me read this again. Crisis pregnancy centers, church and state policies promoting families. Not to mention, they were going to use the very same federal tax credits to promote their own plans. How plans, you may ask? Well, here's one. Romney's plan, what he called the Family Security Act, will reinstate the child's tax credit for working couples and make it available during pregnancy through a cut to the earned income tax credit. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's not forget Marco Rubio's plan, called the Standing Moms Act, which creates a federal website that will list government and private resources focused on mental health, pregnancy counseling, and alternatives to abortions. This is part of his Providing for Life Act. That will allow parents to use their Social Security benefits to pay for parental leave and claim the child tax credit for unborn children. Again, there's another one. Mike Johnson has posted the Unborn Child Support Act, which allows pregnant women to collect child support. That's the mindset of the bills that they posted. All of them beyond crazy. From using Social Security to pay for parental leave. Your Social Security benefits, the ones you've been paying money into, would pay for your parental leave, not your job. Or the Unborn Child Support Act, which pregnant women could collect child support on a child that really hasn't entered the world yet. Or Marco Rubio, whose plan is, we're just going to create a website that has all these helpful areas of information and centers and people you can go to, but still my personal favorite above all else, where, again, this goes right back to DeSantis, where he wants to have state and church promoting families instead of abortion. You don't get more programming propaganda than conservatives. That's all I'm saying. But speaking of conservative guys, just one more story before we get to our feel good segment. I told you guys this was going to happen. I'm not the only cat that has said it. I certainly will not be the last, because with the overturn of Roe versus Wade, that's right, they're going for everything else, especially Ted Cruz, which somehow he is still a senator, believe it or not. He sat there and said that, along with Clarence Thomas, that the Supreme Court should reconsider past rulings, including Obergefell versus Hodges. Because he pretty much sat there and says, and I quote, "The Supreme Court was clearly wrong and overreaching when it legalized same-sex marriage nationwide in the landmark case of Obergefell versus Hodges back in 2015. Why are we surprised? I don't know why everybody thought, for the simple fact of the matter, that when you thought Roe versus Wade was going to fall, that was going to be the end of it. Oh no, that was the beginning, because they're going to go for everything else. Interracial marriages, same-sex marriages. I wouldn't be surprised if you go back to the Brown Board of Education. Would not be surprised. Why? Because the simple fact of the matter is, conservatives with a mix of ultra religious ass Christians are now pushing a narrative. I mean, Moms for Liberty is probably the newest cult on the block. And again, we're not surprised, because they sat there and realized we now have a conservative court that works in our favor. At the same time, they realize they can get just about everything that they want. And that alone is effing scary. And all the more reason why these midterm elections are effing vital. But we're going to go ahead and go into our feel-good segment, because usually on the Frack guy here, we do cover a lot of news, a lot of doom and gloom. But hey, we do try to give you some good news. At least try to put a little light during your midday week, since tomorrow is Friday, which is Thursday. Try to leave you out with some good vibes. And I like stories like this because, again, I am a lottery player. I still do. I'm still playing the lottery because Mega Millions, I think it's like 630 million. And we've all been there. We've all been there. We've all been there. We thought about, oh man, if I wake up tomorrow and my numbers are on this, if my numbers are on this little piece of paper, oh, work is going to be so much fun. I can't wait to go get the vehicle I wanted. I can't wait to get the house I wanted. I can't wait to get the vacation I've always wanted to go on to. There's so many things I can do if financial freedom was in the grasp of my hand. We've all been there. That being said, we always wonder what will we do? I mean, yeah, we would like the fact, I know a lot of me, ooh, thank you, Black Jesus. Thank you, Black Jesus. Never would have made it. I don't know why I tried that note. That being said, guys, there are some people out there that get to enjoy the dreams that we usually have and, wake up to disappointment. This lady in particular, Crystal Dunn, who actually won the lottery in Kentucky, won over 146 grand. Didn't believe it at first. I don't blame her, until she received an email from lottery officials claiming that she to win, so that way she knew it was real. Once she claimed her prize, she went to a grocery store and bought $2,000 in gift cards to give to random strangers in the store. She sat there and said, I worked hard. She believes in paying it forward and passing her along good fortune. Quote unquote, I've worked hard for everything that I have, and that it's an amazing gift. Of course, she says she plans to use the rest of her winnings that she's already working toward, like buying a car and paying off bills. I mean, hey, save something for yourself, honey. Save something for yourself, lady, because $146,000, which I think you spent $2,000, and I think after taxes, still ain't a bad amount. Still not a bad amount. Oh yeah, for all those that don't know, yeah, Uncle Sam still comes after you in the lottery. Uncle Sam is like that one dependent that you can't claim on taxes, but shows up every time you get paid. That's all I'm saying. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Still working on some new scenes. Like I said, like the backdrop, like everything. I'm trying to make it a little bit better. So just work with me. That's all I'm asking. But before I do get out of here, some shameless plugging, guys, I do want to shout out to my buddy Vaughn at Big VZA Dot. You can catch him at the Vaughn Westman on Facebook and Big VZA Dot on all socials, as he is definitely back up to making beats again. So definitely reach out to him for those that may be interested in that type of thing. He is a multi-talented brother. Can't wait to actually have him back on my other shows. But definitely check him out, Nathan Von Westwood, on Facebook, at BigBZA on all socials. As far as for yours truly, guys, my IG handle, BlackBox447. You can find me there on Instagram. You can find me there on Twitter. You can find me on Twitch. You can find me on TikTok. Yes, your boy is starting to be a little bit more active on TikTok. At least I try to be. But definitely, as I do a lot of things, I do review a lot of movies, television shows, and video games. Some gym stuff, because I still do a couple push-ups. I'm trying to get back to myself. I am all about positivity, like I said before. I'm trying to, as I change my mindset, trying to be more positive, trying to be more on the flip side of things, just really motivating myself. I try to do the same thing for others, because we have been through a rough couple of years. And honestly, we all need to be kind to each other. I'm not asking to be overly good Samaritan, but I'm asking to be kind, to be decent. Say hi, say hello, check up on your friends, because we're all going through something, and maybe just saying hi or hello or checking up on them can do a lot more than, put a smile on their face. You may save a life, because it takes zero energy to be nice. It takes everything to be a dick. So freaking be nice. That being said, guys, please be careful. COVID is, multiple Decepticons are still out there. So if you're going to be in a place with a lot of people, please wear a mask. Please protect yourself, because when you protect yourself, you protect others. And that's how we're going to all make it. So that being said, also the tracker at the bottom, because I almost didn't even promote myself, which is kind of a big no-no. The tracker at the bottom, we blow that up, guys. If you actually take that link and paste it into your browser, it'll take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, the Alphonse Podcast. Definitely check them out. Like, share, and subscribe. And also, let me know what you think of the show, because like I said before, guys, I want to know what you think, what you agree on, what you disagree on. Let's continue the conversation. Let's keep that talking. Because, again, that's how we actually make change. That's how we get progressive. That's how we get involved. And definitely get involved during the midterms. I don't care if you vote Democrat or Republican, but simply put, get involved. Know the candidates. Know exactly what they're about. And then just vote. The worst thing you can do is not vote. Like I said before, as long as you're voting, you are active. And that's all I can ask for. So, like I said, get out there, learn the candidates, learn how to run if you're interested. But above all else, go vote. That being said, guys, how the Frack got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel, guys. We are simply giving you all the information that allow you to make up your own mind for yourself. But provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive, we move forward, we try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like elect our first woman, a black woman, to the Supreme Court, electing our first black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first woman as a high-ranking commander in the U.S. Navy. When we don't learn from our, let's be honest, decisions, we are doomed to repeat them. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the Frack we got here. Thank you for watching, guys, as I mess up this outro. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get